Junior and Rising Senior Information session. We have prepared a thorough presentation that we hope that it answers most of your questions. However, if it doesn't, we have reserved some time at the end of the presentation to go over these questions. So John, Mia, Justin, and I are excited to share how the room selection process works with all of you. Manly lost his voice today, so he will be part of the team answering the questions in the chat. So let's review the agenda for this presentation. First, we want to go over some of the updates for the upcoming academic year. And then during the presentation, we will define what room selection is and the important dates that you must keep in mind. Throughout the presentation, we will stress the important points that you will need to focus on, and this presentation should last about 30 minutes. We will explain step by step how the registration and room selection processes work, as well as give you some tips for planning. We also want to go over data from previous years and selection strategies that will help you prepare for room selection. Lastly, we have reserved some time at the end to answer any questions you may have. So let's review what is new for academic year 25-26. So 611 West 112 is a new building that we have added to our portfolio. It is still under construction, but we created a building page on our website for you to review. The East Campus townhouses, the lobby, and the main lounge will be renovated over the summer. To help you practice for room selection, we have created a demo mode environment in our housing portal, and it will help you practice before room selection. Also, keep in mind that Wien Hall and 47 Claremont residents should be aware that construction is planned near these buildings. Also, we will show you ways to fill in our building pages and the information on our website to help you plan more effectively. Lastly, please scan the QR code on the screen to help you learn more about these updates and the details about the Barnard Columbia Exchange. And now I'm going to pass it on to John that will take us through the room selection basics.
Thank you, Lorena. So what is room selection? As many of you already know, room selection is the annual process where rising sophomores, juniors, and seniors have the opportunity to select their housing assignment. Many of you have already gone through this process, so again, like last year, you or your designated group leader will select your room assignment for the next academic year. So how does this all happen? First, you must register for room selection. Second, you or your group leader will have the opportunity to choose a room. Please keep in mind that if you're part of a pre-assigned population, such as RAs, residents of an SIC, FSL, or have a disability accommodation, you will not be able to select a room. Instead, your room assignments are predetermined. Remember that the online housing portal is your one-stop shop for registration and room selection. Here is a timeline of room selection starting in February 20th to 21st, which is the pre-assigned housing declaration. Then between February 24 and March 7th is general registration. Then between March 25 and March 27, it's the lottery numbers and appointment times that are posted. And then finally, between April 1st through the 24th, room selection takes place. Along the way to your appointment, we have additional resources to support you, and we will talk about more about these resources later in the presentation. Now to discuss housing declarations and registration is my colleague Mia.
Thanks, John. So generally, there are two registration periods for room selection. The first period is reserved for students who already have assignments. So these are RAs that Residential Life selects, those who have applied to live in special interest communities, students living in fraternity or sorority housing, and finally, students who have some type of disability accommodation. So these students will actually already have their assignments. Although these groups will already have their assignments, though, declaring your intent is still required. So registration for these groups will be February 20th and 21st. And then for these groups, registration will be from the beginning of the application at the statement of intent all the way through the occupancy agreement confirming your housing assignment. Majority of the population, though, will declare their intent for room selection starting on February 24th. Registration will close on March 7th. So students have 2 weeks to declare, and again, this is required. Some students may already know that they'll be living off campus or taking some type of leave of absence. So although you won't be living on campus, your registration is still required, and you can declare your housing intentions in your registration. So registration is only considered completed once you sign the statement of intent. Since many of you are juniors, junior year is a popular year to study abroad. Even for seniors, you may choose to study abroad in your senior fall. So you might be asking yourself right now, well, what do I do if I'm going to be studying abroad? Well, that answer really depends. If you're studying abroad in the fall, you'll declare your intent as studying abroad and you will not select a room during room selection. If you plan to study abroad in the spring of 2026, you will participate in room selection as normal, and in the fall, we would contact you with the steps for your housing application as you prepare to go abroad in the spring. And if we didn't say it enough already, if you don't declare your intent, you may lose your guaranteed housing. So now thinking about registration, there are generally 2 types of registration. If you're participating in room selection, you can register for room selection as an individual or as part of a group. For all students, though, we highly encourage forming a group that is even numbered. So now that we've started talking about groups, let's go into group formation and the considerations you should be making when forming groups. So groups can be made up of 2 to 10 people, and they are formed during registration. One person creates the group and they are the default group leader, and members join when they register. And then the group leader eventually verifies the group once everyone has joined. The current considerations you should really be making is the who part of the group. So who do you want to live with? Groups can include students from adjacent classes, and that would be a mixed point group. So if you're a junior who just so happens to have a lot of senior friends, you guys can group up. But keep in mind that the individuals who are part of your group could impact your lottery number and thus your selection. And we'll go more into the detail about that later. So many students also want to know whether they should form a group. And well, being part of a group gives you more options. So if you're an individual, for example, you do not have the option to select into a suite like a group can. With options as a group, though, there are some guidelines that we give you. Groups must fill the room or suite to capacity. So if you're a group of 4, you cannot select into a suite with 5 spaces. Groups, however, have the flexibility to split across rooms, floors, and even buildings. For example, if you're a group of 10, you can select into 5 double rooms if you choose to, or 10 corridor singles if they're available at the time of selection. So the key takeaway here is if you want more options like living in a suite, you really need to register with a group. An individual cannot pick into a suite, so it's highly encouraged for you to form an even-numbered group for selection. So again, as we mentioned, you have the ability to form groups from 2 to 10 people, but we've emphasized to all students to form even numbered groups. So being in a group does not mean that you will absolutely be sharing a room or a suite, but remember that groups can pick into singles if they're available at the time of selection. But singles and odd number suites are more limited. So if there are no singles or odd number suites available during your appointment, you will not be able to select a room and thus will be placed on the guaranteed assignment list. And we'll go into a bit more detail about that later. So overall, being in an even numbered group really makes it more likely that you'll be able to choose a room during your appointment time and thus determine your potential roommate in advance if you end up selecting into a double. So how do groups really split up during selection and what does that mean? So it really depends on the conversations you had and what the group wants and what's available during the group's appointment. So if we look at this group of 6, for example, maybe they entered into room selection with the hopes of getting a 6-person suite, but when their appointment time comes, there are no 6-person suites left. So being in an even numbered group allows them to divide across buildings and floors to pick the best option for them at the time of appointment. So it's best to go into room selection already knowing how you would split up or the different options that you're comfortable with so you aren't stressed during your appointment time. So as mentioned, groups can choose to stay in the same building or choose to split across buildings. And again, it depends on those preferences and those conversations that you had prior to selection. So in this example, you'll see that two individuals were able to be placed in Broadway and Shapiro singles, and then other members of a group went into Carlton doubles and Watt doubles. So your strategy really depends on your goals and what's available at selection time. Now I'll pass things over to Justin to discuss the different roles in groups.
Thank you, Mia. So most importantly, who does what? I would recommend taking a screenshot or taking your phone out to take a picture of this, because this is a really important order of events for everyone when it comes to room selection. So as you can see, everyone needs to declare their intent, and that's going through the statement of intent. You cannot proceed through room selection if you have not completed that first step. For group leaders, they're going to create and verify the group, whereas group members are going to join the group. Before your appointment, everyone needs to make a plan together, regardless of if you're in a group, if you're participating as an individual. You need to have a plan to room selection. So really take that time to understand the portfolio and what your options are. During your appointment, the group leader is the only one that can select the rooms and the beds for everyone. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But group members during your appointment time, there's really not much you can do. It's up to the group leader to finish that process. And then after the appointment, everyone needs to sign the occupancy agreement. We're going to say it a couple times, but if you don't complete these steps, you do put your housing assignment at risk. Now, the group leader. Why are they important? Because if you're in a group of 10, the group leader is the one determining where every person in that group of 10 is going to live for the next academic year. They are the ones that are picking the individual rooms. They're assigning people to beds. So they're even the ones saying who are going to be roommates if y'all are selecting into doubles. What we've heard from students, your peers have recommended choosing a group leader that is organized, responsible, and a good communicator. This is vital for the room selection process so that everyone has a great experience. Now, what does this all look like in the portal? As in previous applications, we're just going to ask you to make sure that your personal and contact details are up to date. You'll select your dining plan for the next academic year if you so choose, along with a dining promotion. And then you're going to land on this page. And this is important because, again, everyone needs to declare their intent. So if you're participating in room selection, you're going to select the first option. But if you're studying abroad, if you're taking a leave, you would select the second option, not participate in room selection. You're welcome to come back and change your decision before the deadline, but just make sure that you complete this process. Now, once you've decided to participate in room selection, one of the next images is the group formation page. This is where you're going to go and actually join a group or create the group. So let's say you're a group leader. On the bottom left, you see the option to create the group. That's where you're going to put the group name and password to be able to share with your potential group members. Mind you, please keep all group names and passwords appropriate. We do reserve the right to request that names be changed if we find any that just aren't that great or adhere to our policies. If you're a group member, once the group leader shares the information with you, you're going to click the button on the bottom right that says Join Group so that you can input the information and join your group. After that, you're going to land on this page that says Room Selection Registration Summary. This means you have declared your major declaration for the year, signed the statement of intent, and this is ultimately where your lottery number and appointment time slot will appear in the portal. But just a note, if you don't see this page, you have not completed the process. So make sure that you see this page before logging out of the portal, because if you don't see it, you haven't completed the process, and then you do put your assignment for the next year at risk and your guaranteed housing status. Now to talk about preparing for your appointment, I'm going to pass it off to Lorena.
Thank you, Justin. So how do we suggest that you prepare for your appointment? First, you should explore our residences. We have meticulously reviewed the building pages in our Columbia Housing website to make sure all the information is up to date for you to review. We strongly suggest forming even number groups. Being part of a group requires to designate a group leader that will have to create and verify the group. We want to remind you again that group leaders will be the ones assigning the beds to all the members of the group. so choose the group leader wisely. After appointment times are posted, a group leader may find that they will not be available during their appointment time. When this happens, the group leader can designate another member of the team to be the group leader, and then we just have to go back and make sure you verify the group. We also suggest you prepare multiple housing options and that you follow the room selection process as it gets closer to your appointment time. This will allow you to know what options are available that meet your goals as best possible. Also, if you go to the housing.columbia.edu and click Explore Residences tab, you will end up on this page. In the residence hall directory, you can click on typical residence or room configuration to filter down building and help you research more effectively. Each building page has data points from 2024 that explains the composition of the residence by class. Also, you have the option to review the virtual tours, building tours to get an idea of the building and its amenities. Now, the new building, 611 West 112, is a new building in our portfolio that will be available for occupancy in fall 2025. It is a corridor style building that is composed mostly of doubles and very few singles. So once again, we suggest forming an even number group. The building features individual room controls for heating and cooling, and it has single-use restrooms on each floor and 3 outdoor courtyards. Also, as we mentioned earlier in the presentation, groups must fill a suite completely with no vacancies in order to select into it. This, however, does not apply for 600 West 113 and Carlton Arms. They look like suites on floor plans, but they are not suites in room selection, and therefore you do not need to fill them up to capacity. Groups of any size or individuals can select into these spaces. Now, since groups give you the most options, we also want to provide some guidance on how you can approach the group discussions. You can set an intention before each meeting to make sure that you keep the conversation productive and focused. You need to agree on what your goals are as a group and the compromises that you will have to come to if the space is not available at time of selection. Keep in mind that agreeing to live together also comes with the challenge of sharing close quarters with others that may have different living standards. Reviewing these topics in advance will allow you to make informed decisions and have the proper expectation for the next academic year. Also very important is this portal demo mode that is opening from March 14 to March 24th. So we are launching a demo mode this year after registration that allows the students to test the room selection process. This is only a demonstration and will not represent your options at time of selection. You are able to try this as many times as you wish and is meant to mirror the room selection process. I also want to remind you that we will host one more information session that is targeted more to answering questions about group strategy and selection options. It is scheduled for February 28th, right in the middle of the registration period, to give you time to reevaluate your options and answer questions that may arise as you are forming groups during registration. Now we will discuss how point values, lottery numbers, and appointment times will work all together during room selection.
Thank you, Lorena. So I'm sorry, y'all. I have a lot of slides, so I apologize in advance for how long I'm going to be talking at y'all, but it's a lot of really great information. So point values are based on seniority. I know a lot of you aren't new to this, but we're just going to go through this in the event that this is the first time you're viewing it. So naturally, seniors have the highest point value of all the classes, and their lottery numbers will range from 1 to 1,000. Rising juniors have a 30-point value, 2001 to 3000, etc. Naturally, point values correlate to the lottery number band or range where participants will select. And an easy way to think about this is draft rounds in sports. So seniors get all of the first picks, senior, junior mixed point groups get second picks, etc. Now, when it comes to lottery numbers, that's what determines your housing selection order. So naturally, number one is the most valuable pick because you are the first person to select in room selection. These numbers are randomly generated and inform when you will pick in your respective rounds. So if you go in as an individual or group, you only get one lottery number. We've seen this question before where, does the group, does the group lottery number get assigned based on whoever gets the lowest lottery number? That's not the case. Everyone in the group is assigned the same number from the get-go, and individuals are assigned one lottery number as well. And it's important to remember the closer to number one, the sooner that you're able to select. And lottery numbers are available for you to see in the portal on Tuesday, March 25th. Now, let's talk about group point values and lottery numbers, right? So group point value is the average of the members' point values. So as you can see here on the left-hand side, we have a mixed point group of a sophomore junior group, right? So you have the rising senior, senior junior group. You have the senior with a 40-point value and junior with a 30-point value, and their mixed point group value is 35, right? So their lottery number range will be in the 1001 to 2000 lottery number range. Whereas if you have four rising juniors who all have a 30-point value, their group point value will be 30 and they will fall within the rising junior lottery number range. So how does this correlate to appointment times? Well, essentially, each group has a single appointment time that is determined by the lottery numbers. The group leader, again, is the only one who can log into the portal during the appointment time to select the rooms. And as we've said before, lottery numbers closer to one receive earlier appointment times. Yeah, so just bear that in mind that the lower your number, the earlier your appointment time, which means the more inventory in our portfolio is available for you to select from. So now let's talk about what room selection looks like. First of all, the live viewer is going to be available on Monday, March 31st. This will show you which rooms are available and which have been selected in room selection. Make sure you use this to plan for your appointment time. This is very important to help your group understand what the options are so that you don't reach your appointment time only to find out that your top 5 options have all been selected. This live viewer, is available to all students, meaning individuals, group leaders, and group members at the same time on March 31st. So make sure everybody in the group is taking advantage of this to help with your selection options. Now, what does it look like? Well, you're going to log into the portal during your appointment. For the individual or group leader, you're going to look at available spaces. You'll select rooms and assign the beds from those available spaces, and you'll sign the occupancy agreement. Again, only the group leader is able to access the portal, but once the assignments have been made, all group members need to sign the occupancy agreement. So what this looks like page by page is that on the left-hand side is once again the room selection registration summary page, except this time it's been updated with a lottery number and appointment time. This is where you're going to hit save and continue to access room selection, but you will not be able to get in before your time. So you can try as you might, it's just going to loop you back to this page until it is your appointment time. Once you're able to enter the portal to select, you're then going to land on the page on the right. This is where you're actually able to see all available rooms in the selection process, and you can filter based on building and room suite style. So if you know that if you want a Broadway single, you can very quickly sort by that to then get to the room and click on book room. Now, once you've done that, you will land on assign rooms, and individuals, group leaders, you will all land on this page. And what's important is that this is where you're actually saying who is living in what room. So if you're a group leader, this is where you are deciding which individuals might be in doubles together, who is getting which single. Every person has to have a bed in order for you to complete the process. But for group members, again, this is why group leaders are important because they are the ones making the determination. Once it's been completed, you're going to see the image on the right, which just says room selection completed. That means you have completed the process, beds have been assigned for the next academic year, and now it's time to go through and sign the occupancy agreement. again, we're going to say this over and over. You're going to see it in emails as well, because unfortunately, every year we have students who fall into this circumstance. Selecting the room isn't enough. You need to sign the occupancy agreement, or you do risk losing your fall assignment. So what happens if you can't select a room during your appointment? Well, that's where the guaranteed assignment list comes in. It is an assignment list for students unable to select during room selection. What's very important here that everyone should take away from this, you are guaranteed housing and you will receive an assignment over the summer, which is usually by late July. So if you are unable to select a room during room selection, you will have an assignment. It's just that we're going to try, it's just that you're not able to select during the selection period. This can happen because maybe you're a rising junior who decided to go in as an individual and we ran out of singles. Now you don't have any selection options. Or if you're in an odd numbered group and suddenly there are no more options for you to select to have enough beds for everyone, you will end up on the guaranteed assignment list as well. Um, so those are a couple things, but just remember you will have an assignment in the fall. All we ask you to do is go in and confirm the building preferences so that we can just try to assign you based on your preferences and what we have available. My last section, I promise, data review. Let's just go over a couple numbers from last year's room selection, just so that we can kind of set expectations for everyone. First, with rising juniors, as you can see on the left-hand side, these were the top 5 buildings that juniors selected into last year. So Shapiro, Broadway, Wien, Ruggles, and Watt. Of course, what you don't see here is Hogan, you don't see River, East Campus. So just bear that in mind as you're making those decisions in your group as rising juniors. And you can see here when it came down to how students selected into 55% selected into singles while 45% selected into doubles. So please make sure to have those conversations about who may end up rooming with someone else in a double so that everyone can get an assignment, and most importantly, so that everyone's able to select into rooms near each other. Some more information, as you can see here for the rising juniors. When it came to group sizes, a vast majority joined in even numbered groups, with only a handful selecting into odd numbered groups. So as you can see on the right-hand side, 75% of you selected into even numbered groups, which was fantastic. That's a lot more students that don't end up on the guaranteed assignment list because they were individuals or odd numbered groups that unfortunately got a bad lottery number. So 10% selected into odd numbered groups, and then 15% registered as individuals. So what does the data tell us? You do need to be in even numbered groups, just so that in the event that you get a bad lottery number and then we run out of singles, you are still able to make your selection and you're able to pick who your roommate is for the next academic year. So for rising seniors, what does this look like? Well, you get the pick of the campus. So I don't think it's surprising to see here that East Campus, 45% of you selected into, followed by Broadway, Woodbridge, Hogan, and Shapiro. And then as well on the right-hand side, you can see the breakdown. 82% of you selected into singles, while 18% selected into doubles, likely in suites in some of these buildings. So because you usually have first choice of campus and a larger portfolio to choose from than rising juniors and rising sophomores, we'd still recommend forming even numbered groups. It's just that some of the things that you face will be different than rising juniors with a bad lottery number or rising sophomores. So now I'm going to pass it off to John to talk about resources and takeaways.
Thank you, Justin. So a few takeaways here. First and foremost, again, don't forget to join an even numbered group. And remember, a bigger group is not equal to a higher point value. Even numbered groups provide more options and improves the chances of selecting a room. And make sure your group leader is available for your appointment time and ready to go. Use all the resources available. On the next slide, we'll discuss that a little bit more. And then finally, higher point value means a better lottery number, and a better lottery number means an earlier appointment time. So we have lots of resources for you to use as a tool. On our website, you'll find step-by-step instructions, information about the residence halls, tips about group formation, and more. Our website will also include links to the portal demo and the live viewer once they're available. You can also follow us on Instagram, where we post about FAQs and tips to help break down important concepts, as well as reminders about upcoming dates and deadlines. Our YouTube channel is another helpful resource. You can tour buildings virtually and watch other videos that help explain room selection. Here are a few other important housing dates. The summer housing applications are now open and available on our housing portal. You must check out of your housing assignment by 12 p.m. on May 17th or 24 hours after your last final exam. And then finally, students living on campus during the summer session 1 can check in starting May 26th.
Thank you very much, everybody. So that is the presentation for the information session portion of things. So now we're gonna open up the floor for questions. Here we have representatives from RHLO that can help us with the student perspective on buildings and amenities. We have our students that work here for housing to help for any questions that you may have also from the student perspective about group formation and room selection process, and also the Columbia Housing team that would be able to answer questions that are more from the process specific side. So I can take the first question live for summer housing. So we do not have a way to store, let's say, stuff, but what students sometimes choose to do is sign up for, if they are going to be here, if they're currently here in the spring and looking to be here for summer session 1, they might sign for the interim period, and they can move into their space and leave their belongings in that room, and they don't have to physically be there for the time from the if they don't need to be here for a period of time.
I can take this question live. If students are currently studying abroad, do they just register and do the housing process as normal? Yes. If you are currently studying abroad and you plan to return for fall 2025 to live in housing, you should register as part of room selection, and you can do everything that anyone else can. There are no restrictions in place for people who are studying abroad, so you can join a group, create a group, you can go through the full housing process. And we do highly recommend that you go through this process so that you don't put your guaranteed housing at risk.
Are there any other questions? We have 43 participants here. There has to be a question or two there. Oh, here we go. Yes, you will be able to access this recording. Katie, can you tell us by when?
Yeah, we'll probably have it posted by early to mid next week, and you'll be able to find it in a couple places. So it will be on our YouTube channel, but it will also be on our website. I don't know if you're a rising junior or senior, but it's going to be linked on both of those pages. If you look, we have room selection pages for every single class. And right now it just has a reminder to sign up for a session. Where that reminder is, it will actually have a link to the video itself.
Yeah, and I can take this one live. When you're being selected from the guaranteed housing list, the guaranteed assignment list, does it happen by seniority or by lottery number? Technically both, right? What we're doing is going by seniority to make sure that as we have certain rooms available in certain buildings, we're matching preferences, but we're also trying to put you in buildings that match your class standing. So naturally, we're not going to try to put a senior in a building that's mostly sophomores, et cetera. So it does happen by seniority primarily, but naturally also by lottery number within that seniority bracket. And there's a question here that Minley answered, but I just want to raise it so everyone understands it. Someone asked, how do you go about choosing into a suite that has an RA in it? An example being a 4-person suite, but there are only 2 available beds. This does happen in a couple places where an RA and an RA writer are assigned 2 beds in a 4-person suite. Those other 2 beds in the suite do go into room selection. And so you are able to select into a 4-person suite with only 2 people in your group because you're only selecting those 2 beds. The rule, though, is that you have to be able to fill all the beds available in the suite. So in this case, because 2 beds are available, 2 people are able to select into it. This does not happen in a lot of places on campus. It's in only a handful. So please don't consider that as part of a selection strategy.
Okay, maybe Mia can help me answer this one live. If I might study abroad but won't find out until later and our lottery number has been assigned, can my group request someone else, any upperclassmen? Will it affect my group's lottery number?
So I think if you're uncertain if you will actually go abroad in the fall, the best option is for you, because you don't have the confirmation, is to go through regular room selection as part of the group you want to. And then if you find out later, there are some students who don't find out until the summertime. And then from there, we just request that you cancel your housing as soon as possible, as you know. So if you find out earlier, and if it's throughout the registration period, you can be removed from the group, and maybe during the registration process your friends could join a group, but once the groups are confirmed, then no, you can't add another person into the group after March 7th.
Oh, and I can take this other question. Like asking to answer the other half of the question that I missed about the guaranteed assignment list. What they asked was if there was a possibility for single if you put Wiener Shapiro in your top building. Um, that all depends on what's available in our portfolio. Um, I I know that we try to match people with the buildings that we can, but whether singles are available is entirely based off of a number of different factors. So we just can't say for certain that if you're on the guaranteed assignment list as a junior and you put Wien or Shapiro as your top 2, that you have a higher chance of getting a single. It's based on a variety of factors again, and it ultimately comes down to what we have available. And for when we try to assign those students.
Just to add on to that, I'd say it's always interesting to me what people, the different class years that they preference as their top buildings. I think also, we don't know what we'll have available and be able to assign students to until we do get spaces, but also just be realistic. If, for example, I wouldn't advise a rising sophomore to preference EC as their top choice if they're on the guaranteed assignment list. So just be realistic with your choices because we don't really expect, if you really want to go for EC and you're a junior and you're on the guaranteed assignment list, we don't really anticipate a lot of seniors canceling their housing or maybe studying abroad in the fall or something like that. So just make sure you're being realistic with your choices.
Yeah, and I can take this next one that came in. I see that Sophia is typing an answer to it as well. But just for everyone, is everyone who applies without a group, will they be put on the guaranteed assignment list? That was the question. The answer is no. If you decide to apply as an individual, what will happen is it depends on what lottery number you are assigned. Again, this is a randomly generated number for each person or group. And so if you unfortunately end up with a higher lottery number, which means a later appointment time, and there are no more singles available, that means that there will be no more options for you to select into, and you will then be placed on the guaranteed assignment list. But if you are say, a rising junior that gets a good lottery number with an earlier appointment time, you are able to select into a single and therefore not be placed on the guaranteed assignment list.
We've had a question about some of the different room configurations and buildings, and I just want to use this as an opportunity to once again plug our website as a great resource for finding this information. So there are two ways you could see this, both on a building level and across our whole portfolio. If you're looking at a buildings page and you want to know, does this building have doubles? Does it have 4-person suites? It's actually in the sidebar information. So I would recommend using a laptop or a desktop to actually look at our building pages because there is so much information. Another way that you could find it is if you are in a group of 4 and you just want to know what are the buildings that have a 4-person suite, you can actually go to the residence hall directory and you can filter the options by the room suite capacity dropdown. And from there, you can choose whatever configurations apply to you. So just as another reminder, if you're you have to fill a suite to its entirety, but your group can be bigger than the suite. So if you're a group of 6, you can look at anything that's a group of 6 or smaller. But the building web pages, we spent a lot of time building out that content, reviewing that content to make it as useful for you guys as possible.
Yeah, and to add on to that too, to Katie's point, everything is available on the website. And then if you are ready to go, you know which rooms you're interested in, then please utilize the live viewer. You are able to filter by room configurations. So if you know that there's a 5-person suite in Hogan that you're interested in, you can use the live viewer to filter down to that to check to see if that room or suite is still available. I see Sophia's answering this question as well. In past years, have mixed groups of one junior and the rest seniors, have they had success in getting into EC and Hogan? One of the things that we always say is the first is that we put as much information on the housing website as we can as it relates to the previous year selection, meaning this is how many juniors are in the building, seniors selected into the building, etc. But there's a big caveat to all of our data, which is that these selection options change year to year. It is based on what those students have selected as their top choices as they go through selection. So one year we may have had, some sophomores be able to select into EC, and then the next year 0 sophomores selected into East Campus. So I always say just if there's something that you're going for, just understand that there's a chance that you may not get it. And so just please make sure to utilize the information on the housing website and at the same time, kind of set those realistic goals for your group.
I think we have one more question here, and it says, if I am a sophomore junior mixed group and I end up on the guaranteed list, will I be placed into housing after all juniors with 2,000, 3,000 lottery numbers being placed first? So the guaranteed assignment list, we assign as the spaces become available and we have the availability for them. So let's say, depending on the composition of that group as well, let's say that there were a few sophomores and then in their application then for the guaranteed assignment list with the building preference, they mentioned some areas. So depending on the composition of the group, if we have some sophomore spaces available, we would be able to place them there. I think it just all depends on what is available with cancellations that come in after room selection, and also with students that do get those study abroad letters and approvals, or maybe there's some medical leaves and other leaves that do happen, military leaves that come in after room selection, and all of those need to be reconciled before we're able to properly place the group that is in the guaranteed assignment list. All right, so let's see, one more. So I think I don't, I mean, hopefully this answers the question. Again, it depends on like what we have available. Once we are able to assign everybody, we try to send one email out. That way everybody is able to receive the information at the same time. Yes, we might place some before others, but the email everybody able to view the assignment will happen all at once. That way, we want to make sure that we don't give preference to ones or others. We just want to inform everybody at the same time that they have the assignment. And yeah, we try to make sure that like everybody gets informed. Okay, should we wait a few more minutes or I don't see any other questions coming up. But also I don't want to like stand here and just in this awkward silence. So I think I don't see any other questions coming up. So I'm going to close this session. It will be posted as Katie mentioned earlier. And thank you very much. And if you have any questions, please email housing@columbia.edu. Have a wonderful weekend.